Ferrari blocked every road into Monza, zero media access, security barriers at every approach. They locked down the entire circuit to test their biggest upgrade of the season in total secrecy. So how did footage end up all over the internet within hours? And more importantly, what does that footage reveal about the car Ferrari is bringing to the Miami Grand Prix in 10 days? If you had asked anyone standing outside the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza on April 22nd what was happening inside, they would have told you the same thing. Ferrari is hiding something big. They had no idea how right they were. Think military base. Barriers across every approach road. No media badges, no hospitality passes, no exceptions. Italian local press confirmed that every gate stayed shut for the entire session. Charles Leclerc ran in the morning. Lewis Hamilton took over in the afternoon. Both drivers pushing the SF-26 through Monza's high-speed corners on Pirelli demonstration tyres, limited to 200 km by FIA rules. Ferrari gets 2 of these promotional filming days per season, and this was their first of 2026. They clearly wanted to make it count. The problem is Monza. The circuit sits inside a public park. And while Ferrari's security team blocked every official access point, a handful of fans found the spots where you could just barely see a slice of tarmac through the trees. Mobile phones came out, and within hours, the footage was everywhere. One clip in particular blew up across Formula One social media. It shows the SF-26 rolling down Monza's main straight, with its rear wing doing something no other car on the grid does. The upper flap of the wing rotates completely, flipping into a fully upside-down position before snapping back as the car hits the braking zone. That is the Macarena wing. And until this footage leaked, Ferrari's rivals had not seen it in action since the first practice session at the Chinese Grand Prix weeks ago. And that is not the only thing the camera phones picked up. The car also appears to carry updated halo base fin elements, small aerodynamic pieces mounted near the cockpit that clean up airflow heading toward the engine intake and the rear of the car. Those fins were first trialed in China and now seem to be part of the confirmed Miami package. Beyond the footage itself, Italian motorsport media had already briefed out a longer list of components expected for the filming day. A revised front wing, a new floor, reportedly the main source of added downforce, cooling upgrades, weight-saving parts. But there is an important distinction here. The fan footage from Monza clearly confirms the Macarena wing in operation. The rest of that component list comes from pre-event reports in Italian media, not from what anyone actually captured on camera. The angles were too tight and the footage too grainy to verify the full package. So the rotating rear wing is the headline, and everything else remains reported but not visually confirmed. So, what exactly is this wing, and why does it matter so much? The name comes from Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur. He called it the Macarena as a joke, a reference to the 1990s dance where you flip your hands over. The wing does something similar, except at 300 km/h. Every team on the 2026 grid runs active aerodynamics. The old DRS system is gone. In its place, every car switches between 2 wing states. Z mode, the high downforce setting for corners, where the wing flaps sit at a steep angle to push the car into the track. And X mode, the low drag setting for straights, where the flaps flatten out to reduce air resistance and let the car reach higher top speeds. Every other team on the grid achieves this by tilting the rear wing flap from a steep angle to a shallow one, simple rotation around a fixed hinge. Ferrari does something completely different. Their upper flap rotates roughly 180 degrees around an axis at its leading edge. So instead of just flattening, the entire flap flips upside down. The leading edge swings backward and the flap ends up fully inverted. The result is a much larger gap between the wing elements, which means significantly less drag on the straights. Simulation estimates suggest a possible 8 to 10 km/h gain in top speed over a conventional active wing design. That number is not confirmed by any on-track data. It is a projection, not a measurement. But if it is even close, the competitive advantage on power circuits like Miami is enormous. The wing complies with the 2026 technical regulations. There is no specific cap on how much the flap can move, as long as the movement completes within the FIA's required timing window. Ferrari found a loophole in the geometry that nobody else exploited. Not illegal, just radically different from what everyone else built. No other team has attempted anything like it. Every rival built a conventional flap system. Ferrari went in a completely different direction. So yeah, not great for Ferrari that it is now on video for every rival aero department to study frame by frame. The Macarena wing has not had an easy life so far. It first appeared during week 2 of pre-season testing in Bahrain back in February, when Hamilton ran roughly 5 laps with it fitted. Then it disappeared. Ferrari left it off the car entirely for the Australian Grand Prix, round 1 of the season. It came back for the Chinese Grand Prix, round 2. Both Leclerc and Hamilton ran the wing during the first practice session in Shanghai, and then Hamilton spun. Ferrari pulled the wing off both cars for the rest of the weekend. Hamilton later said its use had been a little bit premature. For the Japanese Grand Prix round 3, the Macarena wing travelled to Suzuka in the garage. It never went on the car. Ferrari kept it as a backup, studied the data, and waited. The version that appeared at Monza on April 22nd is not the same wing that caused problems in China. Ferrari revised it, made it stiffer and lighter, built it to handle the loads that the original could not. The filming day was the first real track validation of the updated design. And now, thanks to a few fans with smartphones, the entire paddock knows it is ready. Here is where the timing gets interesting. 2 days before Ferrari rolled the SF-26 out at Monza, the FIA confirmed a package of rule changes that take effect starting at the Miami Grand Prix. These changes came after weeks of sharp driver criticism. The early races of 2026 exposed a real problem with energy management under the new power unit rules. When a car's battery reaches its recovery target, but the driver is still at full throttle, the system diverts engine power back into the battery. That is called superclipping, and it visibly slows the car down at exactly the moments when it should be at peak speed. In Bahrain testing, the speed difference through certain corners was over 30 km per hour. Drivers were not happy. Some called the new cars the worst ever made. One compared them to a video game. Another said a team chef could drive them, so the FIA stepped in. On Monday, April 20th, they raised the MG UK's energy harvesting cap from 250 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts, matching the deployment output. They also zoned the deployment rules, keeping full 350 kilowatt output in key acceleration areas like corner exit to braking, but capping it at 250 kilowatts elsewhere to reduce dangerous closing speed gaps between cars. And they added a new safety system that automatically triggers deployment if a car is abnormally slow off the starting line. Ferrari's filming day happened on April 22nd, 2 days after the rule update was confirmed. That means the SF-26 ran at Monza under the exact same energy management framework that every car will use in Miami. That is not a coincidence. Ferrari used their filming day to validate their entire Miami package, including the Macarena wing, under the rules that actually apply in 10 days. Every data point they collected is directly relevant to race conditions. Across 200 kilometers of running, Ferrari got to feel how the revised superclipping rules interact with their new aerodynamic package. They could measure whether the energy recovery changes affect straight-line speed and whether the Macarena wing behaves differently when the power delivery shifts from what they had in China. That is the kind of information you cannot get from a simulator, and it is information that no other team has right now. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. This channel covers Formula 1 every week, and the Miami Grand Prix breakdown is coming soon. Alright, so here is where this gets really complicated for everyone involved. Fred Vasseur has called what Ferrari is bringing to Miami a package and a half. That is his phrase. What it means is that the upgrade combines what was originally planned for the cancelled Bahrain and Saudi Arabian rounds, plus some development that was pulled forward from later in the season. Italian media reports suggest that roughly half of the SF-26 will have been modified by the time it hits the track in Miami. That is a huge claim, and that number comes from journalistic extrapolation of briefings, not a direct team statement. But even if the real number is a third of the car, this is one of the most aggressive single-event upgrade pushes in recent Formula 1 memory. Ferrari needs it. They sit second in the Constructors' Championship with 90 points, 45 behind Mercedes after just 3 races. Leclerc is third in the drivers' standings, behind both Mercedes drivers Kimi Antonelli and George Russell. The gap is not insurmountable at this stage of the season, but the trend is wrong. Mercedes has been the faster car on Sundays, and Ferrari knows that without a step change, the gap only grows. Miami is a sprint weekend. That compresses everything. Under the 2026 format, a sprint weekend normally gives teams just 60 minutes of practice before sprint qualifying on Friday. But because of the 5-week gap caused by the Bahrain and Saudi cancellations, and because of the volume of technical changes being introduced across the grid, the FIA extended Friday practice at Miami from 60 to 90 minutes. That is a one-off exception. 90 minutes to learn a car that is, in Ferrari's case, essentially half new. Now think about what that means in the context of the leak. Every team arriving in Miami with a major upgrade faces the same 90-minute window to dial it in. Ferrari has an advantage because they already ran the package at Monza. They have 200 kilometers of data. They know how the car feels, how the new wing responds, how the energy management works under the updated FIA rules. They were supposed to arrive in Miami as the only team with that information. The leaked footage changes that equation. Not completely. Phone footage shot from outside the circuit through a gap in the trees does not give you wind tunnel data or telemetry. Rival engineers cannot measure downforce from a shaky video clip, but they can see the Macarena wing in operation. They can analyze the rotation speed, estimate the flap angle, study how the car behaves on entry and exit of the low drag mode. For a team like Mercedes or McLaren or Red Bull, that is enough to start asking the right questions. And 10 days is enough time to run some targeted simulations. The practical reality is that 10 days is almost certainly too short to engineer a direct counter-response into a car that is already being shipped to Miami. Aerodynamic parts take weeks to design, manufacture, and validate. Nobody is redesigning a rear wing in 10 days based on a phone video. But information is still valuable even when you cannot act on it immediately. Knowing how Ferrari's low-drag solution works changes how you race against them. The straights become their territory, but the slow corners might expose a vulnerability if the wing setup compromises peak downforce. And the battery deployment strategy is now partially visible too. All of that is strategic knowledge, and Ferrari just handed it over for free. McLaren is reportedly arriving in Miami with what has been described as a completely new MCL40. That upgrade was planned independently of anything Ferrari does. But now, McLaren's engineering team has a bonus data point. They can factor Ferrari's low-drag approach into their own simulations and understand where their car stacks up before a single wheel turns on Friday. The wing is not the only card Ferrari is playing. The ADUO system, which stands for Additional Development and Upgrade Opportunities, is the FIA's power unit catch-up mechanism for 2026. 3 review windows are built into the season, with assessments after races 6, 12 and 18. If a manufacturer's engine performance falls at least 2% below the benchmark, they can be granted an upgrade. Fall further behind, and the concessions get larger. Vasseur has openly said that ADUO is Ferrari's path to closing what he estimates is roughly a 0.8-second power deficit to Mercedes. With the original calendar, the first ADUO checkpoint would have come after race 6. But with Bahrain and Saudi Arabia cancelled, Miami is now race 4, and there is a live debate over whether the first checkpoint gets shifted. If Ferrari can close the gap through aerodynamic upgrades at Miami, they might not need an early ADUO intervention, but if the Macarena wing and the broader package do not deliver, ADUO becomes the safety net. And that makes what happened at Monza on April 22nd even more loaded than it already was. This story has happened before, by the way. In 2022, Ferrari did the exact same thing at the exact same circuit. They ran the F-175 at Monza, behind barriers and closed roads, testing upgrades that later appeared at the Spanish Grand Prix. A single spy photo leaked that time. One blurry image. Ferrari later confirmed they had used the filming day to validate race parts. The 2026 version is a much bigger deal because the leaked footage actually shows the Macarena wing working, not just a car going past with some vague shape changes. This is one of the most revealing filming day leaks in recent Formula One history, and the competitive consequences are real. There is one small detail in all of this that gets lost in the technical analysis. Fred Vasseur named the wing after a silly 1990s dance. He made a joke about flipping your hands over. That is a team principal standing in front of the world media, making fun of his own car's most radical innovation. And now that innovation, the one he laughed about, might be the thing that decides whether Ferrari catches Mercedes or falls further behind in the championship. The footage is out, the wing is ready. And in 10 days, everyone finds out if it actually works.